Hi, folks. This is Don Meisner with the North Country Fishing Report. I want to talk about, I talk a lot about lines, but I've had recent experience with really top notch fishermen that has led me to want to pass on more hints on the type of line you should use. And I got to tell you, most of your top fishermen, especially when fishing clear water areas like what we basically have in the North Country, use fluorocarbon. Either is there one type of line on their reel, depending again on where and how they're fishing, or at the very least, as your leader. And I talked on another report about how I hooked a great big pike, and then my braided line tangled up unbelievably, and I ended up losing the fish. But fluorocarbon line it's denser. It's denser than either monofilament or braid. It sinks. So unless you're fishing on the surface, unless you're fishing for fish that are coming up, and as the water temperature increases as we go forward in the year, fish will be feeding upward a lot more. But right now, fish will be down at some level below the surface, feeding primarily below the surface. Fluorocarbon line sinks down. But it also is so less abrasion susceptible. Even braided line abrades easier. So if you use, now again, I'll talk about pike. Even if you don't like to fish pike, even if you're going out fishing and you don't want to catch a pike, if you've got expensive lures on, then you risk losing them because pike's teeth are going to cut the line, or muskie's teeth. Fluorocarbon, if you use heavy enough fluorocarbon, it can serve you better than a wire leader because it's still it's almost invisible, so the fish aren't going to see it. It doesn't kink up like wire leaders do. So there's a huge advantage in its abrasion resistance. And the other thing that I just mentioned is it tends to be invisible, so the fish don't see it. And I want you to think of something else. The most important thing, I think, is for you to be able to have your lure in the right spot in the water column where it's still looking like what it's designed to do, in other words, wiggling and so forth. And fluorocarbon will help you do that because you don't want extra things on your line, like a snap or a swivel or a wire leader. Anything that is not smooth will tend to catch in the weeds, and once it does, your lure is not as attractive. If you've got that smooth, slick fluorocarbon leader and you tie the right knot, chances are you can bring your lure through stuff that you wouldn't be able to if you were using the other type of line. Now, fluorocarbon can be kind of stiff. And so there's many different brands, and I'm not going to go into brands at this point, but just know that you can buy higher qualities of fluorocarbon that will be better and not as stiff and will be easier to use without getting tangles. The other thing is they make a spray where you can fill your line you can fill your reel spool with fluorocarbon. Just use fluorocarbon. And then you spray the spray on it. And what it tends to do is it softens it. Doesn't weaken it, doesn't make it deteriorate or anything. It's designed to soften it so that it isn't as stiff and it's easier and more manageable to use. Nothing is perfect, and we've talked about that before. No line is perfect. They all have their advantages. No lure is perfect. They all have their advantage times when they work better than others. And guess what? No fisherman is perfect. We all have our flaws. We all have our pluses and minuses, but it's what makes the sport. Really, it makes the sport the sport. If we knew that every time we went out there and every cast we cast, we were going to get a fish, there wouldn't be any sport to it. And it would lose, in my mind, all its fun. Until next time, folks, it's Don Meisner with the North Country Fishing Report.